Thanks, Tara. Hi, everyone. So accessibility in gaming has really come a long way in the last few years, and there are more disabled players than ever playing our games. And some of us have been around for a long time, adapting and working with what we have, because disabled people are really good at that. Various Microsoft and Xbox studios run design sprints where disability and gaming advocates are invited in, and they're called subject matter experts, which I think is a really important phrase when talking about passing on accessibility, because there really is no one more expert in their needs than disabled people themselves. So hopefully that's what you get from our panel today, along with how we both overlap and how different we all are, even if we have similarities. So we're going to go through and do the regular introductions about who we are and what we do. But I want to also quickly detail what our individual disabilities are, because I really like teaching people by overwhelming them. So here we go. I am Cherry. I'm an accessibility consultant, and in a previous life, I had a 12-year career in photography, art, and design, which I've managed to translate now to accessibility in gaming. I've worked with studios like Xbox, The Coalition, Turn 10, Gorilla, and several indie developments to help make games more accessible. My physical disabilities are degenerative and also fluctuate from day to day. I injure easily, and I also have a lot of chronic pain and fatigue. My main diagnosis is similar to brittle bone disease, but instead of the bones that are affected, it's my soft tissues and organs. But in terms of gaming, I'm much weaker than a typical person, and I also fatigue quickly, and my capabilities change, and often without warning, depending on how much I've used those muscles or if I've injured myself just by using a controller. So I'm going to go down the line. Nu, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Nu. I'm from Brighton originally. I lived there 15 years. Now I live in Greenwich as an animation student. I have spinal quadriplegia, which a lot of people perceive as someone who's had an accident from later in their life and then becomes someone who can't walk very much, but I'm not that category. I am one of the 5% of people who have had an injury from birth, as in forceps delivery, and an injury negligence by the doctors. But I don't blame them for it, because whatever. I do 3D modeling and animation, 2D animation, but my biggest specialist, I want to say, is gaming. I've loved gaming since I was 3, younger than that. Been playing PC gaming since I was around that age, and then developed onto playing N64 console gaming. I really specialize in disability access because it's incredibly passionate. It's one of my biggest passions, obviously, for many reasons, but also to just be inclusive and to represent other people who can't use things as well as other gamers can. That's it.
Thanks. Vivek?
Yeah, hi, I'm Vivek. I'm from Leicester. I'm 28 and I have Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a degenerative muscle wasting disease. So over years, I used to walk, and slowly over the years I've become a lot more weaker. My muscle degenerates. Over years, I've kind of gone through a stage of deterioration. When it comes to gaming, and about 2-3 years ago, I really kind of had a big problem with it, and I thought I'm not really going to be able to play anymore. So it was only then that I kind of realized how important gaming accessibility is. So yeah. I do a lot of, like Nu and Cherry and Ollie, do a lot of accessibility consultancy, and yeah, I'm a blogger, so I think this is a great conference to be here.
Great, thanks, Vivek. Ollie?
So my name's, can you hear me? Feels like this is pointing the wrong way. My name's Ollie, also known as Battler Gaming. I'm a streamer. I lost my right arm above the elbow. It was 10 years ago now, so it's been a while. So before that, I don't think I really needed anything. So it's kind of weird to get thrown into a world where you need to start thinking about these things. So for me, I've always grown up playing games from the early Nintendo consoles and things like that. And then as soon as I lost my arm, that was kind of the 360 era, when nothing was really being done in terms of hardware for controllers, or at least not that I knew of. So yeah, gradually things have got better and better, and I can play more games.
Thanks. So we're going to move on from there, I think, naturally to misconceptions and assumptions that people make about disability. People look at me and think that I'm pretty able-bodied. aside from using my wheelchair, I look pretty strong, but I'm really not. My disabilities are sort of invisible, and my weakness and coordination difficulties aren't immediately obvious, and they change. It's like a mild muscular dystrophy for me that can get dramatically worse with time. Oh.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Oh.
Maybe someone can just start button.
Oh,
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. There you go. Sorry, I don't know how much you missed. But we're basically talking misconceptions and assumptions people make about disability. So I'm weaker than I look. And things like talking and chewing get really difficult, like really like not obvious things. But for gaming, it means things that where I have to exert more energy over time, like holding down triggers to use radial menus, and frenetic double tapping for actions during combat get more difficult with time, and as the game goes, I'll slip and make more mistakes. I go from being a wicked sniper at the beginning of a gaming session to the end, I kind of look like an amateur, so it's kind of embarrassing sometimes. But what are some misconceptions about your disabilities? And we're going to go down the line with this one again, so new first.
Most misconceptions are the fact that I actually have a lot of processing problems. So I do consider myself on the neurodiverse spectrum. Most of my friends and my partner are neurodiverse. So I find it really difficult to kind of process things as well. Energy is very up and down for me, but it's not predictable. I think that's a lot of people think it's predictable. It's not a pattern. It doesn't work that way. I'm not very good at competitive gaming, even though I really want to be. I find it really difficult because I always feel like I'm letting people down, or that there's a certain limitation to. There's a certain can't remember what I'm looking for. Sorry. There's a certain expectation of me that is required, and it makes me really nervous and not want to do it. Funnily enough, the games that actually make me feel a lot more comfortable are games like Stardew Valley or like Meadow, which is a little game that was made by a really small company on Steam. And they are actually the games that make me feel more comfortable, the ones that are actually therapeutic. But for me, on a physical level, it's always my hands that are they're always crumpled up. So I can't use controllers like everybody else. But the misconceptions for me are the fact that if I have this problem with my hand or I have this problem with my body, I can't be fun and I can't game, which is a constant problem I come up against. I love gaming. It's one of my biggest passions in life. Unfortunately, the rest of the community of gamers kind of assume that I can't do normal things, so I kind of get forgotten about. So yeah.
Thanks, Nu. Vivek, are there any misconceptions that you face?
Yeah, I do, because I think like all of us really, I have a lot of fatigue over time, and also kind of because I've got poor circulation, my hands are cold, so I kind of have to play in the afternoon when my hands have kind of warmed up, otherwise I can't use the control. So I think that's one of the misconceptions we face. Because I like games, I like to play games the way I want to and take my time, because sometimes with certain open world games, I do the missions, or I just walk around for hours. So I don't really like competitive gaming in that sense, really.
Thanks, Vivek. Ollie, what about you? Do you get misconceptions?
I think the biggest misconception that I get is that I think one mic can be on at a time.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is. Sorry, Ollie. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception that a lot of people face is that people with disabilities can't be good at a game. So you see a lot of people who are like really competitive with disabilities and things. Like for me, my latest challenge was playing Rainbow Six on PC. I play a lot of games on console, and lately I've been trying to challenge myself to play PC. And I was playing Rainbow Six on PC, trying to get the highest rank I could, trying to get to platinum. I mean, I only got to gold, but we're getting there. And it's just a case, I always get people coming into the stream and just saying like, oh, you're actually quite good. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I've got everything that I need to make myself good. So it's not too difficult when you got all the tools that you need. That'll help, regular people play normally. If we get the tools that we can play, there's no competition really.
That's great. Thanks, Ollie. There's always going to be a bit of delay with swapping over the mics, but that actually leads really well into the next question. Because what works for one person doesn't work for another person, which is why we get people who swear by PlayStation controllers, and then other people are like, no, you're stupid, we like Xbox controllers. Like, everybody likes the things they like for various reasons. I can't game using a keyboard due to how my hands are affected by my disabilities. And I've also adapted controllers with things like stick extenders, which come from competitive gaming. This is because I can dislocate my thumbs and tear my tendons really easily from things like stick presses and just like sticks being too stiff and things like that. So we all use different adaptations in order to game, whether that's comfortably, safely, or even at all. So what kind of setups do you use? Do you want to start with that?
Yeah.
Nu?
I've just got my little laptop, my MSI gaming laptop, which I bought last year. And that's actually really easy because all the buttons are in one place for me, which makes me physically, mentally use less energy in order to find it. My partner is currently raising money for me to get a quad stick and streaming every week for it, and it costs about $1,500 to get it, which really annoys me because there's this other really big problem, which I think everybody can relate to, is why is disabled equipment so much more expensive than people who are not disabled? And I think there's a really big problem with class and the way that things are manufactured to be so expensive. There's a really big difference between equality and equity, and there really needs to be that understanding of how are we going to make disabled gamers easily get like bits of equipment to help them game, as opposed to like, here's something that's really expensive, just go out and buy it, as if it's so easy to go and do that. Actually, there needs to be a really big conversation about how can we make this more affordable, as opposed to how can we make it more available. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
that's my biggest, that's the reason why I'm here, because I'm here to talk about those issues, because I think that is not really being talked about enough. The fact that I'm perfectly able to game and I'm perfectly able to figure out ways in which I can do that. But if I haven't got the money, if I haven't got the amount of availability to actually get it, then there's no point, is there? So, yeah. So right now I have a laptop, and that's really easy for me to use. But the problem is, it would make it. I want to play like real competitive games, but I can't do that because of the funding with that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I think, Vivek, you've talked to me before about consistency across platforms and as we upgrade to next generation and things like that. And so you faced issues with that, right, Vivek?
Yeah, because when I had a PlayStation 3, I could hold the control in a normal way, but as the generation changed, PS4, I kind of discovered that I couldn't hold the control or press the buttons at all. So that was quite upsetting when I got the PS4. But I think over the years I kind of adapted by sticking kind of things on the buttons or using screw. But as that kind of those solutions didn't work, I went to a gaming charity called Special Effect, and they came in and they added 4 buttons on and also kind of lightened the buttons. So through that, I've been able to play a lot better, really, and stick a switch on my head. So that's working quite well. And also I've got an Xbox One and just recently got the Xbox Adaptive Controller. But I think one of the problems I found is, compared to the Xbox, I can't really use that as well as a PlayStation one. So if we could use that with like the accessible control, that I'd find that might be helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Vivek. What setup do you use, Ollie?
So I use a one-handed controller. It's from a company called Evil Controllers. They make the controller in a few different configurations now, but I mainly use an extended right joystick, so I control the right joystick with my foot on the floor. And that's kind of all I need. It's just got the right shoulder buttons on the back and then the right stick on the floor, so very easy to use. And then I just remap the D-pad and the shape buttons, and it's all there on the one side. Another cool thing about that is I can plug it into my computer. I can obviously use it as a controller on the PC, but I can also use dual input, so I can use just the joystick on the floor for all my movement and everything like that. Using Steam, you can remap that to WASD and Shift and all these kind of things. For my mouse, I obviously have to use a left-handed mouse. It's my most prized possession at the minute because it's a left-handed Razer Naga, the MMO mouse, so they've got 12 buttons on the side and loads of other buttons going on. Recently, I had my last one stolen, and they don't make it anymore. They haven't made it for since 2012, maybe, I can't remember. So finding another one really hard. So now that one's, kept safe all the time. So if that ever breaks, I don't know what I'm going to do because I can't find any more.
Can I just jump into that?
Yeah, go ahead.
With these little companies like Special Effects, they're really great. But I've been like linked in with them on LinkedIn, and they wanted to ask me to come in and help them like create more kind of equipment for disabled people. However, when I asked them for helping me get a piece of equipment, they were like, yeah, but you're going to have to get a fee for that, and it was quite a lot more. Yeah. So I think that these companies are really great, but the problem again is that most disabled people from different areas of England, especially most of Europe, we're all living off benefits, if I'm being brutally honest, and we don't have the money to afford these kind of things that everybody else so easily can get. So yeah.
Yeah, we call that the disability tax, where you end up paying a lot more money to do the same things as other people. So talking about the software, now we've talked about the hardware. I know a lot of people are here today because you work on the software side. Given that everyone uses different setups and we're the experts at adapting things and we know what we need, the best and easiest way for developers to accommodate the entire spectrum of disability is to just give us lots of choice and options and settings. The biggest one is full remappable controls for every game mode, not just the main game mode, and to not rely on the flawed system settings because, talk about cognitive accessibility on the back of Jamie's talk, the system settings, they're great as a band-aid, but they really cause cognitive dissonance and things like that within the game UI. So magic happens really when empowering players to curate their own setups. And with the advent of accessibility-specific menus, I also like to remind everyone that all options are accessibility, not just accessibility options. So aside from full controller mapping, what's your top must-have option in a game, and how important are options in gaming for you? And I think we're going to start at the end this time with Ollie with that one.
Let me just... I don't know, really. I mean, I don't really look for that many things because most of it's done hardware side for me. So I don't need a whole lot of options in the actual game. Like you say, the remapping controls is probably the most important thing, but not just for, I'll give you an example, GTA 5 for instance, there was, you can have, you got one controller scheme, but I wanted to change it between driving and walking, and you couldn't do that, so it made driving really difficult or it made walking really difficult. There wasn't anything that I could do about that. I wanted to have two different maps for each style of movement, and because I didn't have that, it made the game unplayable. So I think the only thing that I'd look for is, like you say, more options, more like, if you're going to have different, like driving, walking and things, have different remaps for that. That's the only thing that I really need. Like I say, most things are hardware based for me. And yeah.
Great, thanks, Ollie. Vivek, what about you? Is there any particular option aside from remapping that is just a must-have for you?
I was thinking, there's a lot of games with a lot of buttons to press throughout, and I think a bit more simplified controls would be useful, really, because I think every time I play a game, it takes me about 2 hours to figure out how to remap the buttons and what options I need. I think a list of accessibility options, that would help a bit more. Because you feel, because it's hard to know what you need. If there's an option there and you can fiddle with it, and then you think, oh, that is actually useful. So I think, yeah, just the option of having that is useful in many different ways.
Cool, thanks Vivek. Nu, do you have an option that's must have?
Again, all of my issues are mostly down to hardware, it's not really down to software. But something I have found really helpful is that this is going to sound really stupid, but actually you can change like different modes in the volume. So like if you don't want the music to always be on in a game, like this is going to sound really silly. I play Pokemon Go quite a lot, and it's really helpful to always turn off the music because I always find it really overstimulating. But as other software goes, as long as the controls are easy to like remap, and as long as you're able to do that, then that's just really helpful for me.
Yeah, I think always having like alternative controls or kind of a more simplified control option, so you don't always have to use all 26 buttons or however many there are.
Yeah.
God of War. Anyway, yeah, go ahead, Ollie.
Not steal your mic. One thing that I have found quite useful, which I've remembered, is say if there's a game with you have to press the sticks in. I know that's not great for some people. It's not great for everyone having to press the sticks in, but if you have the option to either hold down to sprint or tap to sprint, some people find that really easy. Or like if there's an option for like aiming down sights or something, if it's like toggle rather than hold, that kind of thing is really helpful. Again, it's just options.
Can I interject on that again? Like basically, I find it really easy. Like for me, it's more the fact that I'm really good at racing games, and it's a game that I actually find pretty boring because I'm so good at it. So actually, if I can simply hold down 2 buttons and push the controller forward, but actually like I've got really good like tapping skills, so I can go really fast one way and really fast the other way. And some people aren't that quick with that kind of stuff. But for me, it's really easy. That's what I excel at. So I'd like to be able to use gaming as a way for me to excel my skills and make them better. And I think that's something that most disabled people want to, because then we have, don't want to say a one-up on everybody, but we do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is all gamers like to tailor their experience to them and get what they want out of a game. And that actually brings me to the next point, which I'm going to try and speed through the next few questions because we're so chatty. But no, don't be sorry, it's good. So settings in games often become unofficially standardized through frequent implementation. So we have unofficial standards, things like controller layouts and things like that. Recently, we've had really common accessibility options become more common through implementation. Things like QuickTime events options, such as button hold instead of tap, like you're talking about with racing games even. We've seen that in Uncharted, God of War, Tomb Raider, probably many more. But for me, I actually find both of those options inadequate. Neither of them really work for me. Button tapping causes me injuries, and button holds are difficult for me for more than 1 to 2 seconds at a time. Quantum Break had a great middle ground in between that. They didn't have the options, but the way they did QuickTime events was, it was a slower 2 to 4 repeated button press of 1 second. It didn't have to be like fast tapping. It was more immersive too, but I haven't actually seen that in any other game. So are there any common options that are currently known for accessibility that you think could be improved or tweaked at all? I'm gonna open that up to whoever wants to go first.
This is a really hard question to answer because I think pretty much all of the common options, like what really bothers me is my biggest bugbear, is that I really wanted to play Halo for years with an ex-partner of mine, and we played it every single day, and I just sat there and watched. And one of the biggest things that annoyed me when I actually tried to play it is that the trigger was right at the back of the controller. And for everybody else, that's great if you've got, arms that extend to ridiculous measures. I can't do things like that. So, I was always wondering why on earth and this is not really a software issue again, this is a hardware issue, and I'm so sorry. But when you're creating a controller, why on earth do you think it's a sensible thing to have a trigger at the back? I get if you're having a gun, that makes sense, because in your head, the gun is the trigger is at the back. But for everybody else, that's just not helpful.
Yeah, I think there's a common accessibility option that we're starting to see where you can remap triggers to face buttons, like you can switch things around like that, and that's really helpful on the software side. There's a lot of creative ways to solve these issues, and that's why I like to leave it up to designers on how to solve it. We tell them the problem, and then designers are brilliant people. They can figure it out, and it's pretty amazing. And that's, I think, again, comes down to options. Always comes down back to options, I think. Yeah.
I think a toggle for aiming down the sights will I saw that in Child 4. That was really useful because I just tap it and then move my hand in a more comfortable place and like shoot. So I think that was a really good option. Yeah. I think there needs to be more toggles in games for certain abilities.
Yeah, I agree, Vivek. I think we don't see toggle options enough. It's definitely a big one for all kinds of disabilities to be able to toggle instead of hold down buttons. And again, that is something that is becoming known for accessibility. And this actually leads right into the next question, again, which we're doing so great here. I really advocate for working directly with disabled players in order to get things right. As we talked about just now, that when we try and implement accessibility options, designers are amazing. They're creative, fantastic, but you won't know if it's going to really solve the problem that you're trying to solve unless you test that with disabled players. Again, we see the assumption that because remapping is available in PlayStation and Xbox operating systems, that that's good enough, but it keeps creating other issues. So I always harp on about that one thing. But what's a common accessibility mistake or barrier that you encounter in games?
I'm not going to start on this.
Do you want to start, Vivek?
I think one of the issues I found is because the button remappings in the hardware, when you're in game and you keep swapping, you have to keep swapping all the buttons, and it gets really confusing that you're playing one game with the control system or the other and keep like shooting someone when you're meant to be like driving forward or something. It's just...
I just want to say actually that I know it's really helpful to have two different sticks, one for turning the controller and one for going forwards and backwards. However, for me, this is actually really, really hard. I'd love to go back to when it was just one controller to turn a character, but not like in a 3D, in like a first-person space. So I understand that's really helpful to have two sticks, but for me, it's actually really not helpful. It's actually one of the most difficult things because I like really simple controllers where I can just simply, especially in a competitive state, to be able to shoot, turn and shoot face person with one stick. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I think
but
that...
obviously you can't get many games that do that anymore because they're all with two sticks.
Yeah, but I don't think that's necessarily unsolvable. Again, it comes down to like the brilliance of designers and being told these issues and then having designers work out a way to solve that problem. I've seen designers of 3D games solve that very problem very creatively with options. And I do think it's possible, and I think that, again, this comes back to working with disabled players. It's coming up with the ideas, giving them a shot, seeing if you can do it, but then also handing it over to disabled people because we live with our disabilities. You trying it in a few hours, you're not going to know the same adaptations as a disabled person will who's lived with it their entire life sometimes.
Also giving jobs to disabled people who actually would like to help and benefit from themselves. It's like, even though you want to benefit from learning, we also want to benefit from having a job because not a lot of disabled people get to go into the games industry or get to go into the animation industry. I'm an animation artist and I did games design for 2 years. And I tried to actually apply for many jobs in Brighton, but all of them turned me down because I was in a wheelchair. It was as simple as that. They could just go, no, we don't want you because you're difficult. And that's the thing, we don't want to be difficult. We just want to have a mutual understanding. And I think there's such a barrier in our world because we won't connect. We really need to connect, regardless of any sort of occupation we are in. We just need to be able to connect and have an empathetic understanding.
Yeah, diversity is very important. Okay, we've had our 5-minute warning, so I've got 2 questions left, so I'm going to have to pick between the last 2, which we're going to go with the next one, I think is more important. So this one I think Ollie can talk on. For multiplayer games, especially a sandbox mode is invaluable to figure out how we need to set up a game at the beginning of a game. Some games have a slow enough intro or tutorial that we can figure it out, but not always, especially in adventure games that are designed to be more fast-paced or difficult. For example, I really struggled with Horizon Zero Dawn, even though it was my favorite game ever. And it was open world, but there was no sandbox. But instead, once I got super stressed and I was kind of fed up of being super stressed, I actually figured out that the hunting grounds, which were an optional graded arena challenge area, worked out as a really good practice area for me and actually taught me a lot about playing the game and helped me figure out what I needed to do to adapt the game for me. So what are some things in games that you found worked as accessibility but weren't necessarily designed for that?
I mean, I'm the same as you, really. I think playing against bots or any kind of sort of sandbox mode, offline practice mode is really helpful. Another thing is if, I mean, this is not exactly answering this, but if you have gameplay before you can get to a menu, it can be really difficult sometimes if you need to figure out what the controls are before you actually see a menu and see what the settings are. A big one for me, didn't really, necessarily become a bad thing, but Battlefield 1, before you even get to any menu, you're playing the game. So you have to pause, spend your time changing all the things, your controls and stuff, and it just breaks immersion for the game. It doesn't feel like it's as intended. But yeah, like Fortnite, for example, it's got its playground mode, which is really good for just figuring out how to build, because otherwise you're just thrown straight in there and just don't really understand what's going on. I think more games need to have some kind of offline mode against bots, especially, so that you can, just get an idea of how the game plays and how it works, rather than just be thrown into 100 other players.
Again, I think it always comes back to the creativity of design and figuring out that sometimes things that you're implementing as user experience is actually accessibility. Like, so much user experience is accessibility, because when you try and design for everyone, that's how it works out, which we won't have time for the last question, unfortunately, but that was basically, please tell people before you release your games what with your PR, what accessibility options are available, or what options are available in games. But to wrap up, you can see how good accessibility isn't about accounting for every type of disability, I hope. And even though we're all really different, we actually do overlap in what we need, and that's almost always options. Because really, I titled this panel Empower Us, because really that's what accessibility is about. It's about empowering people to curate their own experience and get what they want from games and play it the way they need to, which is the same for anyone, whether you're disabled or not, right? So I want to thank everyone for having us, and especially GAConf, and thank you all to my amazing panel mates, because I think you're all awesome. And if you want to chat to them, take their information or come find us at lunch. Thank you.